Good afternoon and welcome to the latest episode of the Entertainment Show, where we look at upcoming TV series and movies premiering here in Ireland this year and this upcoming month. And we're nearly towards the end of January, and one of those TV series that debuted here in Ireland on January the 11th, to be precise, it was season 8 of the highly successful TV series Psych. It's been a long-running, standing TV series, over 121 episodes. It started back in 2006, and I'm delighted to be joined by one of the original stars of the show. She was there from the start. The word go, the one and only Kirsten Nelson, who plays the character Karen Vick, the chief of police in Psych. And Kirsten,
Jim.
I watched Psych, and I watched a few episodes and recollected my sort of memories. And there was a movie out there a few years ago called Let's Be Cops, if you ever heard of it, that had...
I haven't. No, but tell me.
Two guys take on the persona of being police officers. They dress up as police officers in a Halloween, and then they start to take on the personas of acting and trying to solve crimes as actual police officers. And I sort of got the reminiscence of this, and when I saw the two characters, obviously James Rodriguez, Sean Spencer, and his friend Dale Hill, played by Dale Hill, who plays the character Bustin Gurster, it sort of reminded me of that sort of analogy. These guys who are probably taking on the dream scenario, living out their dreams in terms of reality and not getting phased out in terms of what the norm was. And everyone's sort of buying into this sort of fantasy illusion world that they're living in.
Yeah. And I think that kind of, especially in the beginning of Psych, if you started watching it, that first season, the first few episodes, you see Sean, James Rodriguez's character is kind of a jack of all trades. He doesn't know what he wants to do, but he's really good at a lot of things. So the Let's Be Cops kind of is that same idea, maybe, of I just kind of want to fulfill this dream because I am kind of good at it. And I fall into it. And Sean, the character Sean, just kind of falls into naturally being this psychic that now starts working for the cops because of his dad and how he was brought up, and that pedigree of learning to look at things in a defensive way or a psychic way, or notice things around you. So I will have to find Let's Be Cops and see if I have as much fun with it as it sounds like you did.
No, it's just something that struck to mind, the sort of parallels in terms of. But one thing about Psych, it shows we have different sort of storylines in different episodes. We might have a conjuring running team throughout each season, but in terms of the sort of storylines and the sort of episodes, it mixes a bit of humor with seriousness. You see the cracks and the humor of, say, a Brooklyn Nine-Nine thrown in there with a sort of overlying sort of running sort of team as well.
I think that that's a really great analogy with Brooklyn Nine-Nine, especially now. Brooklyn Nine-Nine came after Psych, and it then outlived Psych. But finding humor in law enforcement, I think, is key to these shows, especially right now, what was happening in the past few years in the United States. And our idea of law enforcement, and looking critically at the role of law enforcement in our society. So trying to find humor in these characters and the silliness of the jobs while catching bad guys was kind of key for us, for Psych in particular. And we tried to find that balance between, are we a cop show, or are we a psychic show doing silly things? And I think we tried to find that balance. Sometimes it was successful. Sometimes it was like, oh, what's going on here? The murder rate in Santa Barbara, California is very high for such a small town. So we had
Kirsten, your character, Karen Vick, she always reminds me of the mother figure, but she always is that sort of good cop, bad cop. She'll warm you when things are going well, but she'll turn the spoon on you fairly fast when things are going not in terms of up to plan as well. But she's a character full of personalities. She almost strikes me as a multi-dimensional character. She's so many sort of different personalities going on within the one sort of person, within the one human body as such.
I thank you. And I think that's Kirsten. And I think that that's what the creators and writers saw on the page. They wanted her to be this mama bear figure, this grounded person. So all of the silliness could go on, so that Lassiter, could be the foil, so that Sean could go be ridiculous, so that Henry Spencer could be curmudgeonly, so that Gus could be neurotic, and that Juliet can try to keep things together in her young way. Whereas I was like, this is how you do it. This is what the mama bear says. So hopefully that was still coming across. And me as a mom, having to multitask, having to keep my kids in order, I kind of brought that to it too.
And Kirsten, what was the working week? I know I'm taking you a long way back now to 2006, but in terms of season one, obviously you've been in an awful lot of TV series, movies. Was it a normal sort of set in terms of the working week? You'd arrive in Monday morning, probably get this script, have this sort of table read, run through a few sort of things, obviously start filming, then changes would be made, maybe block shoot location, block shoot, and then back to the sort of studio. Were you talking maybe 6 to 7 days episode for wrap?
Jim, I don't know whether or not to be nervous that you know so much about the shooting day on a TV show. I'm very impressed. Yeah, it kind of is like that. Now, with Psych, especially going back to 2006, we would get the next week's script the week before. During one of our last days of shooting a current episode, during our lunch break, we would have an hour lunch break where we would all gather in a conference room and we would read the script out loud. So we would have a table read. We were shooting in Vancouver, Canada. And so we would have to be on the phone line with Los Angeles so that they would hear it, they would read it. And then we would start the next episode the following day. Now, we had a 7-day shooting schedule. So it would take us 7 days to shoot one script. And that was actually a day shorter than a lot of 1-hour series at the time. A lot of 1-hour shows in 2006 were given 8 days to complete one episode. And our network at the time says, oh, I think you can do it in 7 days. So we had long days then. There were, especially in the beginning, early starts. So 6:30 a.m., you were out of the makeup chair to start, coming together as a cast and crew to hopefully have your first shot done by 7:30 a.m. 6 hours later, have lunch. An hour after that, do another 6 to 7 hours. So sometimes we would have 13 to 15-hour days. And after you wrap, you get a 10-hour turnaround because we're in Canada, 10 to 12-hour turnaround, and you're right back at it again.
And I suppose, Kirsten, that sort of hectic sort of schedule, obviously, and you're probably doing, I imagine, I didn't check it now, but you're probably doing 20 to 25 episodes per season in terms of that. So you're probably looking at that schedule and you're saying to yourself, those 7-day weeks, that's probably, I suppose, a 6 months, 7 months per season. Is it very hard to take on other projects or get involved or any other scripts when you're tied down to a regular long-term series sort of role? And in terms of Psych, did you know back in season 1 or season 2 that you would be guaranteed maybe 2 or 3 seasons, or was it you had to hit ratings per season in terms of getting a renewal?
So Psych would do 16 seasons an episode. 16 episodes a season. And we would break it up that they would air 8 at a time over a course of a year. And those 16 episodes would take us about 6 months. And our shooting schedule was in Vancouver. So we would shoot April through October.
Okay.
with weeks off in between to help the writers kind of catch up with writing the episodes, shooting the episodes, writing the episodes, shooting the episodes. So it takes about 6 months. And we would shoot April through October. So we would use the most of the great weather in Canada. Summer in Canada is gorgeous. Winter, not so much. Not so much. It doesn't look like southern sunny California when you're shooting in the winter. So we then knew where we had to be April through October, but our schedules would then open up October through April. So doing other gigs during that time was possible, especially if it's guest stars on other TV shows or smaller stints in movies. But there's something comforting in a guarantee of knowing where you're going to be for 6 months of the year, because that's 6 months of work that you can budget around and kind of plan your family life around. But in the beginning, we had no guarantee of how long we were going to be there. We actually took a month break in season 1 after we shot the first 8 episodes because we didn't know if we were going to come back.
Okay.
So we had to see what the ratings were when we premiered, if people would even like it, if they would come and see us. And then only once we got those numbers back did the network say, hey, I think it's looking like people are watching this show. Let's bring you back and shoot another 8. And we didn't know if we were going to be picked up for the next season really until the previous season ended. So we're wrapping. Okay. We don't know what's going to happen.
And was that even the case? Maybe even when you're well established in season 5, for example, was that the same scenario? You didn't know whether you're coming back for season 6 even?
Yes. I think in season 2 or 3, they might have given us maybe a month as we were nearing the end of our shooting season. So we might have been shooting episode 14, and then we would get the call. Congratulations, you have another season coming up. But it was never like current shows, like something big like Law and Order, a show that's been around for years. Sometimes they get 2-season pickups. We never got that. So we would never know until the end of our season. Like, are we coming back next year? Do we have to say goodbye to our fabulous crew? Do we have to pack up the sets? But usually it was good news.
And Kirsten, you mentioned there was an assurance being on a regular TV series for over that length of time as well. When you're sort of involved in a project in a long-running sort of TV series, and when it finishes up, is there a sort of a sense that, right, I've done that role, I might want to venture out, maybe do a bit of guest roles, maybe do a movie here and there, not really go back into another long-running sort of TV sort of series straight off the bat? Is that a sort of a norm for an actor when they're involved for such a long time like you were, and that's in Psych, that maybe for the next year or two that you try and look for maybe occurring roles or movie roles or something that's, dare I say, not infinite in terms of its scheduling?
I think it could probably go one of 2 ways. You either want that time off of, I get a breather. And maybe I can look for something little that is so not like Chief Vick. Let me do something very light and silly and goofy, right? Sure. Or it might be like, I don't know, maybe how astronauts describe once they've gone up into space, they're so ready to get back up into space again. They don't even want the downtime.
They know nothing else, basically.
They know nothing else. And there is something when you're working on a show, when you're being on a set, when that's your day-to-day work of that creativity, you want to get back to it so quickly. And I think out of the 6 or 7 main cast of us, we all took different directions. One jumped into another show immediately. One took a lot of time off and going directing projects. Another one was doing guest stars, just from show to show to show to show. So I did a couple of guest stars and different pilots after we wrapped, looking for the next, sure thing, the next big job.
And Kirsten, I'll take you back to season 8. And season 8 is, I watched the trailers for season 8 and obviously episode 1. And I watched some of the interviews that were done around the time in terms of season 8, and it's an intriguing sort of time, dare I say, for your character. She plays a big sort of role in this sort of season, an awful lot of storylines, and dare I say, is the happy family broken up?
The happy family was broken up at the end of season 7. The chief says goodbye. Chief Karen Vick has to, as she says, fall on the sword for her family, take the fall for hiring this guy, for hiring this psychic, because she believed in him, maybe against policy, but I truly loved these people. So the beginning of season 8, there is an outsider who is the chief of police. Now there is, everything's been jumbled up. Everything's been changed and we don't know where we are. Is it going to be the last season? Is this going to be the next new thing? Is Chief Vick going to come back? So season 8 brought a lot of change, but I'm so jealous that this is the first time that you guys are seeing it, that you can live this for the first time instead of me going back and reminiscing it. Like, I know how it ends, but this is so exciting that Ireland is like seeing it for the first time.
Yeah. And I suppose for your sort of character, Dane, obviously you knew the storylines at the time, and when you're reading the script and you hear the sort of storylines and you know how it's going to run, is there still a sense of suspense in your own sort of mind in terms of how you sort of depart, how you sort of maybe make a comeback, how you sort of in terms of play that out at the time? And when you sort of, maybe dare I say, in the United States, when you sort of see some of those episodes back, does it bring back the recurring emotions that you were going through at the time on set, basically?
The emotions, we
all get a familiarity and a love for one's character. We almost treat it like an extra family member, a child, dare I say.
And I think that's a perfect analogy. It is like a child. It's something that these characters that we created and we became so warmly part of us. It was a family. I'll give you an instance of this memory that I have. The end of season 7, the last episode, when the new chief of police comes in, Trout is his name, played by Anthony Michael Hall. The Sean and Gus and Lassiter and Juliet are stunned, and they're like, "Ugh, who are you?" And you can't take our chief from us. And for that, I can constantly feel like I'm there again, because I was sitting directly off screen, but away from the camera, but the actors on screen could still feel me. I was present, but I was gone. And it's that kind of feeling of being ripped from the family that carried us into season 8, because we didn't know what was going to happen on this journey. But the gift that I got in season 8, which everyone over there in Ireland will see, is that I finally got to direct a full episode. So I knew my journey was going to be as a comeback, but also with a new hat on, since I was going to be in the director's chair.
And Kirsten, in terms of mentioning that being in a directing chair, obviously for the first 7 seasons, obviously you're getting the instructions with your fellow cast and crewmates. You're one of the gang. Now all of a sudden they're taking instructions from you, and you're sort of whipping it out there in terms of what you would like to see in terms of the camera. Is that a different sort of intrigue in terms of sort of getting yourself to adopt a new sort of role on set, where you've climatized to such a role with these characters, these friends' personalities? Now you're venturing a different line with the same people that you've soldiered with for maybe the previous 7 seasons?
Yeah, it is. And sometimes it's a smooth transition for actors to sit in the director's chair, and sometimes it's a really bumpy one, depending on their personality.
Is it harder when you know them? Is it harder when you know them, when you've been there for 7 seasons with 7 people, with the same sorts of people?
I think it's easier. If you have a good relationship, and I'm very fortunate in that I truly love these people on screen and off screen that were friends. And I knew that I was going to be directing my friends and the crew as well, with like the camera folks, that they were not going to let me fail. And I knew that my actors, my friends, but they were now my actors, that they trusted me not to let them fail. And I think that that kind of symbiotic relationship is fantastic. And so makes that transition into the director's chair an easy one, because of the love of the script, a love of the show, and we know the tone of the show. So we want to do the show an honor. So for me, and being the mama bear as Chief Vick, I was already telling these people what to do. So now I have to tell them what to do on camera to direct them. So they already knew how to listen to me, and they said, okay.
And Kirsten, I suppose you mentioned there before we came on live on air, you mentioned there about current projects not being aware, but in terms of the last year or so, in terms you might know if they're coming out here in Ireland or the UK, has it been a busy time for you since COVID? Have you been involved in any other sort of TV series, maybe pilots, maybe sort of movies or TV sort of movies that might be coming our way in the next year or two, whether they're or not? But
so the only thing, because COVID really hit our industry hard. If you think about it, especially before the vaccines came out, 2020 was just, it was dark. That our industry shut down because of all the unknowns, because of all of the testings. And we were an industry where you couldn't wear masks. We were one of the only ones where it was absolutely impossible to perform your job wearing a mask. And I don't know if people really thought about it that much, because they're like, oh, well, they're on my TV screen, so I don't have to see them in real life. So obviously they are fine. But it was a really difficult time for the industry as far as what was shot and what wasn't. And they weren't hiring as many guest stars. The casts were becoming very small on projects as well. So think about all those people who were looking for work, but only hiring a very small number. But we were fortunate that Psych did a third movie in 2021. Okay. So we've shot 3 full-length movies now. And I don't know if are they even at you guys? Have you seen any of these? Do you know any of these?
Well, in terms of, I heard of the movies were shot, but no release date has been given here in terms of coming forward. So obviously I'm wondering, are they going to cinema release, or are they going to be premiered on something like a platform streaming provider like Netflix or something like that? So it's a bit up in the air where they will go.
Yeah, well, I know if you guys have Peacock now, I know they're going to be released on Peacock 1, 2, and 3. So we were very fortunate. I know, from my mouth to Peacock's ears, bring it to Ireland. In 2021, we did go back to Vancouver and we shot our third movie. And in a time of COVID, we were so fortunate. But it was a very different atmosphere to work in with COVID protocols. We were tested every other day. We had to quarantine for 14 days upon entering Canada, following, Canadian and the British Empire's rules about going to a foreign country. You must test, and then quarantine by yourself for 14 days, which was the first time that I had ever done that. And especially being alone for 14 days in an apartment was new, but it's definitely a memory and something to write home about.
A few takeaway pizza meals are supposed to deliver to your door at night.
It's like, just leave it at the door. I'm coming. So it was, in Canada, they check on you. So if you're in quarantine, they come and they check on you. I had a wellness officer come to my door, like rang me up and said, hello, I'm downstairs. Let me up. Got to check on you to say where you're going to be. I'm like, oh, the police are here.
TV license inspector.
I know. I was like, can I see your badge? But we did 4 weeks and we shot another movie, and that was truly, truly a gift for 2021. So there's no current projects that I'm looking forward to in 2022 yet, but 2022 is still young.
Still young and vibrant, Kirsten. Kirsten, in terms of Psych now, season 8, episode 1 has debuted on January the 11th. If you could tell all our Irish audience why they should tune in now for episode 2 of Psych and season 8, and what might be in store for them in terms of drama, suspense, and entertainment. Over to the one and only Karen Vick for the last 30 seconds.
So Ireland, please tune in to Psych season 8. You've already been introduced to Chief Trout, and whether or not the gang will rally around him is yet to be determined. But episode 2, Carlton Lassiter has to decide whether or not he is going to solve a potential murder of the possible Chief Trout and where their new loyalties will lie. But there's so much ahead. There's babies, there's marriages, there's goodbyes, and there's a launch pad into 3 movies after this season is over.
On that note, Karen Vick, as they say in Chief of Police, thanks for giving us that synopsis of what's in store. And for the one and only Kirsten Nelson, thanks for joining us this evening to tell us all about season 8 of Psych. And no doubt about in the future, we might be back to you again when those sort of movies hit our screens here in Ireland. But for the moment, Kirsten Nelson, thanks for joining us from a sunny Los Angeles to a sort of quite dark and cloudy Ireland here. But for the moment, take care, God bless, and stay safe.
Thanks so much, Jim. It's been a delight.
Thank you. Take care, Kirsten.
Bye.